this is used to bring about totalitarianism. That you need a military that is willing to ignore the Constitution and willing to enforce upon people something that most people would have said, if they were reading Superman and Truth, Justice, and the American Way, was wrong, and they would say, I'm not going to obey that order.
You talk about West Point and them removing those phrases from their motto. My brother's a West Point grad. His wife's a West Point grad. I'm an Air Force veteran. My little brother is a Air Force veteran. My dad is a Vietnam vet. My father-in-law is a Vietnam vet. My grandfathers were both World War II vets. Wow. We're a military family, and yet I look at what's going on in the military, and it seems the most common faces we see representing the military are men in dresses with their hair pulled back. And I want to skip over honor for a second and go to country and ask you, when I joined the military, I believed in the mission. And I think at this point now, I believed in something that wasn't quite true at the time. But now it's so clear that the mission of the military is not necessarily to defend the Constitution, which is what I swore to do, but even that it may not be to defend this country. And I want to ask you, is it worth defending this country? And can our country be defended? Can our country be reclaimed?
Short answer, yes, but not easy. This is going. I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get ugly. You are so right, man. The military has been just turned upside down and turned into a social engineering program. The kids that have the same feeling today that you had when you joined are now questioning whether or not to join, and most of them are not joining, right? They don't want to be a part of this social experiment. I mean, who wants to join a military where, like you said, the examples, the commercials even, but certainly the ones you see on the news are guys dressed as women. I mean, it's an embarrassing, I mean, we're going to lose a war. There's no question about it. The way that our military has been, decimated in this way. And so most of the good people are getting out, and most of the good people are not going in, which means, unfortunately, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you have more and more of the evil and those that are using it for the very, very wrong reasons, getting more and more control of it, which means, and I don't mean this I don't want to scare people, but I mean, I'm a historian, just the cycle of nations, the way of the world throughout history. This is used to bring about totalitarianism. You need a military that is willing to ignore the Constitution and willing to enforce upon people something that most people would have said, if they were reading Superman and Truth, Justice, and the American Way, was wrong, and they would say, I'm not going to obey that order. In other words, it's all by design, and it's part of what, unfortunately, it's the natural progression of a nation when it gets to be about 250 years old. So the question is, can we stop it? And I believe yes. I think we're in that very beginning part of the cycle for tough times. So we all have seen the memes, going around. Tough times create tough men make for good times make for soft men make for tough times. So we've had soft men, right? Because we've been fat and happy. We've been enjoying we're lazy because we enjoy so much freedom. We got all these blessings, and why would you go do the hard work? And so for a long time now, decades, we haven't had to do the hard work, and we've been living on the fumes of previous generations paying the price and the ultimate sacrifice. So now we've gotten soft, and so that's causing us not to stand, not to do the things like what you're doing with this podcast, and so we've entered tough times. So can we stop the tough times, or at least shrink the amount of time we're in the tough times? And I think we're just entering them. All the things we're facing right now, they're bad, but it can get a whole lot worse.
Right.
If enough people wake up, if enough people realize this is not good for my children and my grandchildren, I do believe we can turn this. And I'll just give you numbers that I think are the magic numbers. I think we have to get to the point where 3% of the just like 3% fought in the revolution, 3% of the presidential voting population, about 5 million people, wake up and get engaged and become what we call biblical citizens. They're actually living out their faith. They're living out their constitutional duties. They're doing all the things we've been talking about. About 10,000 candidates. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not. About 10,000 candidates running at all the local, I'm talking water district, HOA, all the state legislature, all of it. And about 100,000 what we call Constitution coaches that are hosting this kind of thing, sort of leading their community, their church, and building that up. That's the tipping point. I think that's where we really see the opportunity to interrupt those tough times. That could take a generation. My dream is that we do it before the 250th birthday, which is 2 years. It's 95 days, 2 years, 95 days from today. When this airs, it'll be less than that. So it's not a lot of time. But there is a huge awakening happening. And if we become force multipliers and we really lean into this thing, I think the hockey stick curve can happen. I think we can rapidly get a lot of people up to speed on how to be good citizens. It's absolutely worth defending. Now, practically, Garrett, I think you and I both know, and most of your audience knows, it's going to take not just winning at the local level, which is where we start and where most of us should be focused. It is going to take a president that is willing to just clean house. I mean, you've got to wipe out all of these woke generals. You're going to have to fire half the Pentagon and quite literally remake that institution, restore it back to MacArthur-type speeches and mindsets. And that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And I'm not even sure it can be done in one 4-year term of a president. That's probably a decade of changes. Think about it. That's how long it took them, right? I mean, you had a lot of changes starting with Obama, but it took, even in his 8 years, someone who hated the military and was, never for the things that we're talking about. And then, of course, Biden's done irreparable damage. It'll take generations to overcome a lot of that. But if the institution can be remade once again back to those old principles, it'll take time, but you watch what's it take to make a good officer or a good soldier, a good Marine. I mean, it takes time, and and the institution right now is not turning out a lot of good. I mean, I hear it, man. I don't even want to share the stories of the people getting fired, kicked out, that come anywhere close to our mindset and our values. There's a purging. The jab was one thing. They did a lot of it with that because it was someone that was unwilling to just go along. But it's way beyond just the jab. So, man, I didn't mean to depress your viewers, but that's a big one, and it has to be fought. I mean, that's a battle that we can't – if you don't have a nation that's willing to defend itself, if you don't have enough young men and women willing to go in and sacrifice and serve and have that patriotism, we're definitely done in 10, 15 years. We will not last as a nation. Yeah,
and I think it's important. It's not depressing to understand where we are if we know where we want to be.
Men of Issachar, brother. Men of Issachar. Understand the times and know what to do. It would be depressing if we said, there's giants in the land and we can't win. That's what 10 of the 12 spies said, right? It's not depressing if we say, there's giants in the land and we have the formula. We know right here, brother, all the answers are in here. We just have to live it out. And that's literally, it's how do you treat your neighbor? Politics is nothing more than how do you treat your neighbor? And we know we want to treat our neighbor the way we want to be treated. That will restore blind justice, equal justice, actual biblical justice over this social justice that is causing us to persecute people and use a broken DOJ and broken FBI to literally. I mean, I testified a couple of weeks ago in the Praying Grandma's trial in D.C. She literally was praying at the Cap, fasted and prayed and went in and prayed over the Cap, and they want to put her in jail for a year. So our justice system is broken. I don't say that to depress people, but to say eyes wide open, understand the times, and know what to do. We have all the answers. We know the formula that produces a good society. We just have to be active enough to say no to evil. I'm not going to let it happen on my watch, not in my neighborhood, not in my family, not in my community. And I know how to implement the good stuff. You know me, I'm a country boy, brother. It's just garbage in, garbage out. Good stuff in, good stuff out. It really is that simple.
This episode of Rapid Response was brought to you by CTC Math. Visit them at ctcmath.com today.